You guys ever had a Voodoo Ranger before?
Yes.
I've not. It's pretty tasty.
New Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
New Belgium.
Do
I'm actually looking
recommend.
forward. I'm going to go to Asheville, North Carolina over spring break.
Yeah, we're just
Oh,
gonna.
I have seen that before. Is that IPA?
Yeah. This
It's
is
like a serious IPA, isn't it?
yeah. It's pretty. It's like 9%. So we'll see where this recording goes tonight.
Good Lord.
I'll be the one
I'm
using.
sorry.
I'll be the one using the soundboard.
Sorry to delay. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick before we start.
Well,
Sorry.
technically we
Keep
already
the sound-
started, so we already opened the can. So
well.
there's just going to be a little transition when Tim comes back, everybody. So pause.
Let me just. Oh, if this stays in,
Why
I
don't-
want to fill it with soundboard.
It's not going to stay
Why
in.
don't-
It's not going to stay in. I might leave
Yeah,
some
keep
of
it
it in
up.
because it'll be funny.
Keep it up.
I don't know why you would host podcasts on a platform that allows a guest to just do this. I'm not strong enough for this.
Well, you
Just
could go
be-
in and mute people's soundboard. So
I think Mike's already headed there.
Nah, we'll leave it on. I don't care. Yeah, so as everybody can see right now, I mean, we've got Tim and Ryan back with us this year. We did the same thing, this kind of a sit down last year for 2025. They were gracious enough to come on and walk us through the show last year, and they were 100% willing to do it again this year. So before we jump in, or I hand it over to Evan to get things rolling and let you guys introduce yourselves as well, just because most will probably know who you are, but you never know. Welcome to the Aged Out Podcast, everybody. We're the two hosts, Michael Fantini and
Evan Worrell.
Oh, it's less of a pause. Snoid's going to be happy. Comment, like, subscribe, share the video. I don't know if we'll put this on podcast services. We'll see. But all the links to support us are in the video description. Aged Out Fundamentals playlist. Work on your hands every day. Free tool out there for anybody that wants to use it. AgedOutPodcast.com. All right, Evan, take it, and we'll just see where this goes.
Yeah, so just as a refresher, Tim and Ryan are parts of the design team. Two of the parts of the many parts. You know, we're obviously missing a few other people. Andrew Markworth, Corinne, Josh. I'm sure there's a plethora of others that are weighing in on just ideas and brainstorming. But we're super thankful to have you guys back. And, you know, as we get into this, I'm sure your roles will come to light as people see what you do. I know, Tim, you do a lot of the music for the battery and choreo, and then Ryan, a lot of the visual design as well. But I'll start off just kind of, you know, you all put out the video explaining the show on your own channel, which people highly encourage to go check that out. But just for our listeners and our channel as well, I think there were a lot of probably heads turned when the original announcement was made. People just be like, what's this about?
Yeah.
Rhythm X 2026, the end. So we'll start with you, Tim. Just kind of take us through the thought of, you know, coming out of 2025, coming into 2026, what do we want to do and present as an ensemble, and how we got to the end?
Sure. Well, thanks for having us. We enjoyed the opportunity last year for sure. It's always great to, you know, see what you guys do for the activity and be a part of it and support it. This year, I think there are lots of interpretations of why it is that we call the show what we do and why the title is The End. Every single one of those interpretations is valid. I've seen that wide variety, a lot of what people have described and expressed, and how they have seen the product and internalized it and thought what it could mean for them, and then expressed that publicly. That's kind of, I mean, that's a little bit the point, is allowing people the opportunity to see a really, you know, unique presentation of artwork that everybody gets to do in this medium, and not necessarily be held by the hand and taken through from beginning to end of here's everything that it is and what it should mean to you. So everything started from a seed of, we sat down as a design team very soon after finals last year, and we thought there were a lot of feelings, as there are every season. And there's always a period of reflection, and we try to internalize that in a emotionally intelligent way, and have it guide our decision making process for the off season, where there are lots of decisions that we make. I would say the main catalyst was just this purposeful question of, if we never had the opportunity to do this again, what would we do? And I think that some people interpret this show as a direct answer to that question, as in, what would we do with our visual? Oh, everything would be colored mint. What would we do for our musical inspirations? Well, we would choose, REM and NF and Gangster's Paradise and a mixture of classical music and original. And I think that's a little bit off the mark, because what has resulted is a product that has been sort of created organically by constantly asking that question. And I think for us, most importantly, it meant that we could take risks that we always wanted to take. So it wasn't necessarily like, hey, I always wanted to do this one thing, so let's make sure that this show has that one thing. There were conversations that had those elements in them, but it was more so a just taking the reins off of what it is that we thought that we could do, and having more honest conversation about the type of show that we could create. So the end means something for everybody, and I know that is probably not the most satisfying answer for everyone. But for me personally, it is really satisfying that it's not a clear answer for everybody, and that everybody has the opportunity to sort of explore how it is that they would treat this experience, whether it's the one time that you get to see the show as a observer or audience member, or how you live through it as a member of the ensemble, how you coach through it as a member of the instructional team, how you guide people through it as a member of the administrative team. There's just so many ways that people can interpret how it is to treat it the way that they do, knowing that there's a finite reality to it. So that's maybe a little bit more information than we gave in our video on our channel. You guys talk about like, hey, we put out this video and it describes the show, and it does and it doesn't. But I think the continued conversation about it is just that's what makes it really fun and enjoyable to go back every weekend and make it a better thing.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool, and I'll jump this over to Ryan as well. As Tim just said, there are things that are ambiguous, but also very not ambiguous. Endings can be undetermined themselves with different facets of life, but everything in life does have an ending that you do, whether it's a school, a conversation, a job, a life. I mean, that finite thing that Tim said does make a lot of sense, and bring very real interpretation to it, and everybody experiences it just in different ways. So that is kind of the beauty of the eyes of the beholder. So for you, Ryan, as you are moving into this, and we're sitting down with the team to craft a visual design, what led to the conversation of like the set pieces that you all ended up with the mint green, with the couches, the book casings, the different things?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for having us. Like Tim said, I really enjoyed our conversation last year, and I'm thankful to be back on. I do think it's really cool to have mediums like this to just be able to dig into stuff. So thank you guys for doing what you do. Also, shout out the other 3/5 of the Mech Design team, Andrew, Josh, and Corinne. It's this show in particular. I think what interests people for the most part is a byproduct of just kind of where they're at that point in their life. As Tim stated, we started this process just directly after WJ finals, like most people do. And all 5 of us bring different experiences and different perspectives to the table. But we did just wrap up our second year of the 5 of us doing this together. And so there's actually a couple like pretty substantial shared experiences now. That was not the case when we first kind of came together. So I think at those initial meetings, what we're really trying to do is just figure out what's moving to people, like what's something the 5 of us could rally behind, because it's, one thing we're trying to do is create something that's, wildly entertaining and pushes the boundaries of the activity for 7.5 minutes. But we have to live in this for like basically 11 months. And that's like actually a pretty big ask, like the idea and the emotions that are behind it and the source material and all the creative endeavors and the intellectual pursuits, they have to be so substantial that we could meet regularly for basically an entire year and never grow tired or, just bored with what we're trying to pursue. And so I think what that does is it kind of serves as like a filter to a lot of ideas. So like a lot of ideas basically just get eliminated off the table immediately because they just can't sustain that runway of thought. And one thing we've been trying to do really actively, and one thing that I honestly is kind of like my a little bit of like an activity wide goal, is to just see this push of people being able to pursue things that can outlast 7.5 minutes. And some people are doing this. I'm not saying that this is like the first time this has happened. But sometimes there's this expectation, which is not put on the show by the sheets. So it's coming from some sort of cultural expectation in the activity, that you can only present something that could be explained in its totality through the medium of indoor drumline in 7.5 minutes. And if that statement is true, then it really like reduces what you can explore intellectually, emotionally. And so we kind of just committed like, what's the most substantial, sobering, emotional, intellectual thing we could get to, and that's kind of what led to this. So you know, the mint idea is something I've had for a couple years, but like a lot of ideas, like sometimes you just have these ideas and you don't really know what they are. Like you might think it's a show concept, but it's actually a drill move, or you might think it's choreography, but it's actually an aesthetic, or you think it's this, you know, fully orchestrated phrase. It ends up being a snare break. So you kind of just gotta like put ideas away for a little bit and see what they end up attaching themselves to. Like I've had this mint idea for a little bit. It's a direct rip from a hip hop artist that I'm a fan of named Toby, who has basically committed his entire like catalog to this, and they're very intentional with their aesthetic in their music videos and their live performances and their album artwork and their attire. And it was just really, I love their music, but I also just like it's a really interesting juxtaposition. There's something very like soft about the color palette, but they were doing it against like lyrical content and musical genre that didn't relate, it felt like, but there was something like so perfect about that. There's also you know, coincidentally, like at the exact same time, a buddy of mine turned me on to this artist named Daniel Arsham, who does these like art installation pieces where he does it kind of like in gray, but he kind of like just gray washes everything. So that's kind of where that came from. We were kind of experimenting with that. Like we talked about the aesthetic, but it's, you know, we were like, how does this fit into anything? Like, you know, does the show have to be called like Moments or something? Like, is that what it has to be? We didn't know how this was going to fit in. You know, the props, just honestly, like going back to my point of things being a byproduct of where those people are at, like 2024 and 2025 were incredibly like prop heavy shows. It was a lot. I'm not even just talking about like the composition as much as just like the season. Like it was a lot of undertaking, a lot of legwork from a lot of people. Like it was a very big pull on the organization. And they ended up being wonderful. So that's not a criticism of it. Like I love how those props ended up and what they did to those shows, and I wouldn't change it for even a second. But doing, you know, two shows that for me as a visual designer, I don't know if other people perceive them this way, but there was like a category to them of the prop integration to the visual design. It made me feel like, well, if this was the last time I ever got to do it, I'd want to show, you know, myself, the group, give the member an opportunity that we could create, you know, championship level visual design that doesn't have to lean on this, that we could create moments that are outside of it. And that's not a criticism, just to be clear. It's just like for me, where I'm at, I did two shows that were like that, and I kind of wanted to just try something else a little bit. So there was a seed that was planted early of, and this might be ironic to some people, because some people might see our set and think there's a lot going on, but relative to what we've done, this is a big step backwards in terms of quantity and scope. So that's where it started. And then to make a long story short, as the concept started to get realized, and the level of emotion started to become apparent of what we were trying to tackle, the props had to be able to bring that to life. You know, how do you know, what does it look like when something's coming to an end? It's kind of a weird question, but like it's, for me, there's a very like sobering, humanizing aspect to that. We really started to prioritize the emotion of the show, like over the intellectual or the aesthetic pursuit early. Like one of our earliest visions was like, I would love for everyone to just be crying in this show at some point. Like that to me would be a big metric of success. And so the way that the props kind of fit that mold is we had talked about like, well, needing it to be relatable. Like, could a person put themselves in the show? Not like they understand every second of what's going on, or they could write a synopsis that we would agree with. Not like that, but like, can they emotionally connect to what's going on? So that led us to kind of like, well, you know, what is more relatable or connectable than like a person's house, like the things they're around the most. So that's kind of where that went. There's also, we get some assistance from that, just candidly, from like the Daniel Arsham pieces and the Toby stuff, because they do have some of that. Like Toby did an entire like reduced version of some of his album that they call Moments at the Crib, and it's all like them on couches and like chairs and stuff. And so, yeah, and also, shameless plug for people who work in this activity: don't be afraid to just be inspired and steal stuff. That's why it's all there. So that's kind of where this all went. And we engaged with it for a little bit, and yeah, it's been cool. It's been a really fun pursuit so far.
So did this idea, after you guys kind of birthed it or whatever, agreed upon it, is that when you went back to the well, it was like, well, this piece we've wanted to use forever would fit well? And like, how did you start putting the pieces of the musical puzzle together from that? Did you have some of the music in mind first, and then the show idea came about and you were like, well, that works with that? Was it idea first, then you went and grabbed all the music from your all shared playlists or wells of like, this would be cool to open with or whatever? Like, how was that from there?
The music pool was pretty like densely populated pretty early on, I think. So one of the things I think in our very first meeting, when we were talking about, and this is like in May, we're talking about, hey, if this were the last thing that we could do, what would you do? One of the easiest things for us to do was to come up with different songs, artists, inspirations, and just kind of throw them out there. We had everything you could think of in that meeting, and I think through the intrigue was sort of, well, yes, we've always wanted to do a show, and this is like independently, everybody's saying this. We've always wanted to do a show that has that utilizes this song or this tune or this piece of music, and it eventually started to kind of filter down a little bit. Like some things are more realistic than others. One of the things I think that we held on to, though, was this idea that it's okay to have a myriad of different inspirations. So, and that was something we talked about very plainly early on, is that like, it's all right if we have, like, if we play classical music and country music in the same show, that's okay. Like, we're going to figure out, it wasn't a genre based decision. It's not like we have to go down this avenue. It was more like, what's the content of it? And why do we want to use it? So, sometimes the reason that you want to use music can change wildly depending on what your show is, what sort of effects you're trying to create. There are certain things like the Gangster's Paradise, for example. That was a tune that I think Ryan had actually brought that one and like added that one to our playlist. We had a huge playlist of songs early on, and one of the things that he liked so much about it was that it's one of these like name that tune things where like in the first like second, everybody knows what song that is, right? Like as soon as you hear like the opening couple of counts of that, it's like, okay, I know that, and I feel something, like I have some sort of connection to it. You don't need to play the whole thing. And so that was a really interesting component of design for us, where we felt like, just because we choose to use source material doesn't mean that we have to use it in any sort of measured form. It could be really short, it could be really long, it could be just the lyrics, it could be the backing track, it could be the chord progression, so everything kind of came through in a different way. Some of the opener material stuff from a composer named Graham Reynolds, that was a little bit more about the feel and like the vibe that it created. It was one of the things that Josh has been wanting to do for years is have music in our show that comes from a place of like tension, like something that would be a soundtrack to a horror movie. But like he's proposed like Alfred Hitchcock based stuff over the years, like just all sorts of stuff. And I think that in this show in particular, it started to make sense where it creates this emotional response of like tension, suspense, angst, confusion. And so that was very intentional for us as well. Like we want to use this because it elicits these particular emotional responses to it. And so, quick, everything. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just on that thing you just said there. I remember the first time I saw the show, I drove to Evan's house in Richmond and we're watching it, and it ended, and I knew that I liked it, Like the vibe of it was cool. I liked it, but I didn't know why initially. I was like, the music was cool, the playing was good, like always, like. And then I think maybe you just saying that, like trying to get people to experience a range of different emotions in different parts of the show. Maybe that was why. Like I felt stuff at every point, even if I realized it or not in the moment. And the more I sat with that after, I was like, and watched it again.
I actually get a little bit of like goosebumps when you said that just now. Like that's exactly what we're like. We have had judges respond with that exact same sentiment during the show live. Like they watch some part of it and they say, "I don't know what this is, but I like it."
Yeah,
You know,
literally.
or I don't know what's going on, and that's not, you know, I don't know. That's not to say like that was always the goal necessarily. I think sometimes um, you have goals realized for you. Like you achieve something that you didn't know that you were even set out to achieve, but once you're aware that that's what you did and you did it as a group and a team and a family, it's just overpowering for
Mm-hmm.
you. So like that sort of thing is, it's wild to me because not everything that we create is like goes on this clean pathway, right?
Right.
It's not like we follow a yellow brick road from the beginning and we have this concept and here's all the pieces that we're going to put together and this is what it's going to become. And you guys know this. You've been a part of developing productions and how moments, either small or big, come to fruition and what they do and how they impact people. I think that's been one of the most fun uh, components of this particular season is having a show that people can't explain why it is that they are a fan of it. Um, it's sort of like when you're watching a movie the first time and you're actually sitting through it and you're paying attention to it and you don't sit in it and think. It's rare that people sit in a movie and think, man, I love this, like right now, like right in that moment. You're just absorbing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation happens after you get out of the theater or off your couch or whatever it is, where you start talking about, man, that was a great and there's this retrospect where you start to just play back what it is that you experienced then, and the things that stuck to you may not have stuck the same to somebody else that saw the exact same thing that you did, but it's just as meaningful to them as it was to you. And so yeah. So anyway, to go back to the original sort of music question, the easy way to answer that is that we had a long Spotify playlist,
Mm-hmm.
and we started to whittle that down, and things just kind of floated to the top.
Yeah.
There were some things that like we held on to for a while, and we're like, I just don't, either there's not room for it. I mean, we have this show has 7 movements to it. That's the first time that I can remember. And this isn't a mark of like, it's not like a show is better if it has more movements or something like that. It's just there's sort of a common, sort of predictable like 4 or 5 movement structure that a lot of shows have, right? Like an opening statement, an energetic movement 2, a ballad-esque movement 3, a closer movement 4, a tag ending, right? Like you have these sort of typical approaches to structure, and we live in that to some extent. But I think like the fact that we have 7 movements of this show is just, it can be attributed to our stubbornness that we had pieces of music that we didn't want to let go of. We're like, no, like we're gonna play this in the show. I don't care if it lasts for 30 seconds, but we're gonna use this somewhere in the program because it's so important, or it's so valuable, or it's so iconic, or any number of reasons why. So that's sort of how that progression went.
When you made that metaphor of, or that comparison to like film and movies and sitting there, that kind of connected that in my head too with what Ryan was talking about creating something that can outlast the 7.5 minutes, because that's what happens in film too. You leave the theater and you're like talking to somebody else who saw the movie, like at the end of Inception or something. Like, did it wobble, did it stay, like, are we still in the dream, are we not in the dream, well, what did you think of this, well, what did you think of that, and things like that, to where almost the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and some aspects of it create that conversation that allows it to last outside of what it does, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that's a cool. I didn't really think about that until.
I think there's also there's this unique connection that people have to film where I assume that you guys have experienced this sort of thing in your life where like something happens in your day to day and you're just reminded of a movie. And, like in an instant, you're like, man, I want to sit down and watch like all the Lord of the Rings films right now for some reason, or like, oh man, like that makes me really want to watch Usual Suspects again.
Now you're speaking my language, Tim.
And it's not like you in my experience, you rarely actually do that. You know, you don't actually like hold on to that one memory or that moment in time and then you act on it and you go home and you like make popcorn, you just sit down and watch that thing. Sometimes it happens that way, but oftentimes it's enough just for that memory to exist in your mind. And with this medium, you know, live performance is so fleeting that like when we create that sense or that sentiment in somebody to, you know, they've seen the show and then maybe they don't ever get to see it again. But if we can create these little emotional connections that they have with the program, that like something happens later down the line for them and then that makes them think of this moment in this particular Rhythm X show, I think that's so cool. And it's not intentional, you know, but it's a component of the why, like the reasons that we do this and we create things that are open-ended to an extent enough that people can have those individual experiences with it.
Well said.
Yeah, I mean, well said, very well said. Yeah.
It reminds me of something, and we're going to flesh this idea out, and I'm just going to throw this out there for a second. All of this, to me, you know, we talk about like show X or show Y doesn't have, you know, it's a little shallow or there's not enough depth in the effect category or not cohesive enough. And it's like, I just look at every show concept as it's just a wrapper for the designers and arrangers to express their creativity and create cool stuff, cool moments that make the audience feel stuff. And it's like, oh, we're going to do this within, you know, Mystique did the Mantra show in 2011, or, you know, you have some that are much more literal, like the Man in the Arena, and I'm still working on like thinking this through in my head, but so I don't want to get too far into it. But you talking about just the feelings and the audience feels stuff at different points in the show, like that to me is what defines a good show versus, oh, well, story point A moved to story point B and we have a main character that moves through. It's like, it's a hard storytelling medium. So I think if we focus on more just like creating art that just conveys emotion and makes the audience, I don't know why I like that, but I like that. Or this reminded me of this. That to me is more effective in quotes than, you know.
Well, and sometimes Mike and I are guilty of being, you know, prisoners of consuming this in a more sterile way through a screen instead of experiencing it live. Like obviously we will come semifinals, finals night. So I think in those regards, it's easier to pick things apart instead of just sit there and enjoy them. And because you just can't experience that emotion of the performers because you can't see their faces. I think
that's also something that we benefit from as educators throughout the course of the season too, is like when I watch video of our show, it's so much different than trying to coach it live. And so there's a benefit to it as well. There's a silver lining to like, well, you can't see their faces, you can't get all this emotional connection, but I can see when people's feet are out of time, or if somebody's, you know, not stepping off in the right spot, or if our spacing isn't quite right, or, you know, so there's a benefit. I don't know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, I suppose. It's funny, you mentioned Mantra, these things that like, it's just a 7-minute show, but it lasts a lifetime. Like sometimes when I like if I go to like Josh's house and I knock on his door just to be funny, I'll just knock with a da 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 da. You know, just like I'll just do that, like just to kind of mess with him. Like for, you know, it's just a part of life that, you know, like that has this. That at some point, these shows, these 7-minute pieces of art just infiltrated everyday life. And anyway, just sort of I don't know. It's just a funny anecdote that, like, you know, it's a real thing. You know, it's not just like, hey, you watch this and then when finals happens, everything goes away and we don't ever think about them or see them again. I mean, they are in a way, you know, somewhat permanent.
Yep. Well, that can be a much deeper discussion, but today we're here to watch your all show from this year. Y'all want to jump in, or do you have anything else you want to hit on, Evan?
No, I'm good. We can pull it up, and then
Sure.
I'll kind of let Ryan talk us through as well, just, you know, how we got to the beginning of the show. There's kind of like, you know, this chaos that's going on, and then all of a sudden, you know, things just kind of like fall away, and we get into the beginning of the show here. Do you all want to watch like the first 30
You go
seconds?
up to the snare break?
Yep. Yeah, sure. All right.
Then we can backtrack.
Program The End. WGI Sport of the Arts is proud to present Rhythm X.
Let me know when to stop.
Up to the snare.
Oh, I thought he said up through.
I
thought he said up
no, you
through
go
the
on,
snare.
bro.
I thought he said up through
to
the
the
snare
opening
break.
snare.
I heard through. I heard through.
No worries at all. No worries at all.
If at any point you tell me one thing and I just keep going, just be like, hey, pause the video, doofus, and I'll be like,
My
no,
main
no.
concern is that when the video pauses, that the drill looks good. So if it ever, just play pause real quick. No, yeah. So well, we can start with like the emotional justification, I guess, at the top. So you can, you know, obviously we just kind of spoke for like 25 minutes on some of this concept. It takes a second to like on ramp, you know, what this concept is supposed to be. The thought process here, and I won't share any like personal anecdotes here, but I'd imagine everyone has at least one, is supposed to be this representation of the reality of something ending, the beginning of the end of something. Those moments, I would imagine for most individuals, are very sobering, and they are sometimes surprising. They're also usually met with some amount of regret of what you were doing prior, because you were acting in the ignorance of the fact that it was going to end. And if you could have known that earlier, you may have been doing something differently. So the thought here was like, okay, can we create a universe right away that feels mundane and pointless? So we have them just ambiguously, randomly, without order, just walking around the floor, and everyone is just talking. So everyone, and if anyone sees this live, I don't know how this comes through on streams or videos ever, but everyone in the ensemble is talking right away, very loudly, and they're saying, well, you just have to see live to see what they're saying. But the goal here is to just create this atmosphere of like comfort, casualness, you know, just make it feel very humanized, non-traditional drumline. These are individuals who are going about their business. And with any show, you have to figure out how the announcement works, of course. You know, there's obviously a whole universe of pre-recorded. How do you work it in? Who's going to do it? Is it timed? Is it just our, you know, traditional announcement? And what we had to figure out, one of the problems to solve, so to speak, was like, how do we showcase the group realizing that the end is coming? Like, what does that look like? The announcement is the end. And so that became the catalyst for that. It's like, well, what if when they heard the announcement, that was them realizing that this was the end? So the announcer at every show interrupts the mundane, pointless nature of what they're doing prior, and is the exact person that informs them that the reality they were living in prior was not with all the information they needed. And so the first thing that happens here, this like melts into the ground, is one of many emotional experiences that happen throughout the show that are a representation of endings. You know, the complexity of things ending, especially if they're something that matters to you, it includes like the entire spectrum of emotion. And so, and it's not even the same person to person. You can't even like plug and play people's experiences into different things. People deal with all kinds of things differently. And so the show allows for that, that variance and that complexity and that nuance person to person. So there's like this, like overwhelming emotional set in that things are, temporary in this way. And then the first kind of emotion we wanted to tackle was this sense of like panic of what now? What does this mean? What would I do? You know, I can almost in my head like imagine the chaos visually on the floor as like the intellectual representation of all the questions that just fly through someone's mind when their life changes that quickly, or when, you know, a piece of information is given to them that is that substantial. Um, we really wanted to see how long we could live in chaos. You know, chaos is always a great effect and is something that's been explored visually like since the beginning of the activity. But it's hard to sustain well because you get to a certain threshold and it just feels like, okay, now what? You know, this is also a direct rip, at least parts of it, of one of Toby's music videos. So I encourage people to go check out his library. He has a music video where there's just people sprinting around randomly all around him. And I was like, well, I wonder if I could chart this, like if I could chart 20 seconds of everyone sprinting around the floor. So we go into that, and then we have the reprieve of the snare break. And the goal of all of this is, like I said, is to just showcase from an emotional standpoint, which I do kind of put at the top of the hierarchy of the show. The goal from the emotional standpoint is to showcase one of the reactions that an individual is likely to have when they realize that the end is coming.
And so then when we get to the snare break, is that kind of like the refocus of like the reorganization of the chaos pretty much?
Yeah, it could be interpreted that way. Yeah. And also sometimes when we talk about this show, drumming. Well, I was about to say that.
We had to drum at some point. So, I mean,
yeah, at some point we have to be an indoor drum line. That's part of it. That's maybe the biggest part of it. But also like sometimes when we talk about this show, it's hard to talk about for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is because sometimes I found myself, I wonder if when people hear us talk about it, if they think we're just like dodging questions, because it's kind of hard to give like really straightforward answers sometimes. But that's because like we don't know what we're doing all the time, and we committed to a show that was going to be like that. Like, and I know that like that is inherently funny statement to say. What I mean by it is like we chose to not like boil down the show in a way that made it like untrue. Like here's the metaphor I kind of told the membership. Like I have children that are young. There's certain subject matter that I don't tackle with them as kids because their attention span doesn't last long enough for me to actually explain what it is. And if I tried to, it's not like I explained a reduced version of it. Like I end up explaining something else entirely. Like if I have to take a complex concept and boil it into 3-year-old language and I only have their attention for 15 seconds, what I end up saying like almost does more harm than good at times, because it's like so far from what I'm actually trying to say that it's like I shouldn't have even tried to say it in the first place. And like that's kind of where some shows have gone historically at times for us. And so we kind of committed to like, you know what, like some things are hard to understand, and that's okay. Like it's okay that we can't explain all of this in one sentence. That's reality. Like that's, you know, especially when you're tackling subject matter like we are. Like if someone sat you down and was like, let me tell you what the end is like in 2 sentences, like your first thought should be like, I don't trust you. That's wait, you don't have enough time. Like you don't know me, you don't know the situation. This is like one of the most complex things we could go on. So I say that because we've intentionally tried to not let ourselves get intellectually bogged down with being able to like critique jargon, explain things, because what it ends up doing is reduces the creativity of the show. And so we've kind of like put the heart before the head a little bit, I guess I'd say, and how some of this comes to life, where like if someone on the team is willing to like step up and champion like we should do this, then we do it. And that's enough justification for us. We actually don't force that person to like, you know, get up on the jury stand and intellectually defend every decision they want to make. Like if they've got the conviction to do it and it fits inside the confines of the show, then that's the direction we go.
Cool.
Heck yeah.
So we'll start it again from the beginning. Evan, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just kidding. We can watch that and keep going. Do you have another destination stopping point, either of you, that you want to get to?
Maybe the beginning of the quad feature.
Right, the beginning sort of in to the quad feature. I got it this time.
Yeah, it's after we leave the couch in the middle of the floor.
Okay. We'll see if I can get it. If I go past it, just tell me to stop.
Give you the signal.
Performing their 2026 program, The End. WGI Sport of the Arts is proud to present Rhythm Ads.
I would have loved to have seen the first couple times that you did all those running charts. I love those root implements too.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So I love the root implements. Those are pretty cool. And then Tim, I'll let you obviously explain some of this too. But also that's the first time where, besides the conversation that gets cut off at the beginning, like the membership gets like vocalized sound. So yeah, I'll let you guide us through that.
Yeah, that's one of those direct things. If as a result of that conversation of, what would you do if this were the last time that you could construct a show, design a show? I have one of the things that, like, in my notebook for a long time has been the use of spoken word, and we've utilized this sort of thing in the past. It's sort of in a minimalist way. It's like the beginning of the closer in 2013 is a good example of that. Like I don't know, just all those vocalizations and that sort of thing. Like, it's kind of like just turning the nature of drumline members putting vocals in their own show anyway into something that's actually audible and effective. And so this was that whole moment around the couch. I think we started with like just a couple of vocals in there. Like the choreo came first, and then the vocal layers were added to it, and I think we've put more and more in. If you watch the show, recordings from earlier season to where we are now, there's more vocals now than there were early season. The sort of like the big picture reasoning for me with that is just how important human voice and communication is to existence in general. It is such, like, we're doing it right now. Like, this sort of thing, like conversation, is just irreplaceable. Having your voice in your brain heard and understood. It's funny that I'm misspeaking at the same time I'm making this point, but it's just so valuable, when you feel something and you think something and you get to convey that to somebody and they actually understand it, or they reciprocate it, or you continue to talk about it, that, like, there's just nothing like that. The human language is one of the most beautiful parts of existence. And it's not like so in the show, we actually have a development of the use of human language from the beginning to the end. So, and what I mean is, like, the beginning of the show to the end of the show. So in the beginning of the show, there's this cacophony of voices, and they're saying things, they're saying words. It's in English, but it's almost like there's so much of it that you can't pick out any one thing. So you don't really understand what anybody's saying, but you know that they're saying something. You know that they're trying to communicate, and that communication is disrupted. After it's disrupted, the first time that we hear that voice come in again is essentially at the end of the opener, but it's not saying anything. It's like these onomatopoeias or these just like vocal sound effects almost that they don't really mean something, but they're a nice like sort of flavor addition to the musical product that we have. Over the course of the show, however, the use of voice becomes more articulated and meaningful. So we start with these whoos and hums and like all this like breathy kind of stuff, and it's very primitive in nature. At some point, though, like that turns into singing, but the singing is more like choral. So in Gangster's Paradise, when we're doing the choral singing, it's not saying anything. It's just ahs and oohs, and even in the ballad where we're setting our drums down and there's some screaming going on a little bit.
Oh yeah.
There's like the vocal track there is screams, and so it's intentional, but it's not a word, right? And the lyrics that are coming from the front ensemble are do's and da's and things like that. And then we get to actual lyrics by the time we get to the end of the show. So and not only do we get to a couple of phrases, that's me in the corner, that's me in the spotlight from REM's Losing My Religion. But then we get to the NF stuff where it's like completely articulated, poetic messaging. And so one of the really intriguing layers of this show is the fact that, yes, we use human voice, but we intentionally, like, it's like we increase its availability and messaging from the beginning of the show to the end of it. This particular moment around the couch was just one of these things that, like, we just knew it was going to be really cool. To be honest with you, like it's one of my favorite parts of the show, and it's not for a particular reason other than sometimes you create something and you're like, hey, while you guys are doing, like, when you ask a bunch of 19 to 22-year-olds to, like, hey, I want you to inhale audibly from count 2 to count 4, and they're like, what? And I say, well, in that space, I want to hear that from all of you. And they just kind of, the look on their face is anywhere in between like complete faith to complete just like foolishness, confusion. It's all of that. But then what happens is when they perform it and a couple times through performing it and practicing it and rehearsing it, there's this believability in it, and the commitment to what it is that they're doing, what they've been asked to do. And the more that they commit to it, the more impactful and effective those moments of the show are. And they can feel that live. So like when they do it live in front of people and they really commit to it, you have this visceral connection with the audience that, like, you've let your guard down, and so they have too. And that's just one of the coolest things about this show, is that we put things in that we know are, they're neat, they're cool, they're fun, they're all these adjectives. But they enable the members to create their own vulnerability in a way that I don't think any of us expected to request of them prior to the season and prior to putting this show onto the floor. So I love this moment of the show, the surround of the couch. One of our VE members, she's on the couch in the middle, and she's sort of in like a marionette kind of way. She's like conducting a little bit of what's going on around her. There's not really some like hidden meaning to that, like we're all under somebody else's control, or there's it's nothing like that. It's just a cool representation and a contrast.
It's just cool stuff, man. These just rappers to be creative and do cool stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've all seen like dance groups and like Broadway shows or stage productions that have choreography in them, and you see choreography a lot, and I think very rarely we're like, wait, why did they choose to put their arm in this position at that one moment during that count? Or, like, you just look at like the way that somebody presents themselves as a human being, and it has enough nuance and intrigue and just a little bit of like disparity from what it is that you're used to or what you were expecting, and you're in it. Like you're sold. And I think this is a tiny little like 20-second moment of our show where I think we really succeeded at doing that.
Nice. All right, so we'll back up. Get to Evan. You got anything else? I thought you were about to say something.
Nope.
All right.
I'm good. We can back up and
back up
catch
a
that
little
again.
bit.
Unless Ryan, you had anything you wanted to insert in there as well.
No, we keep going. I think Tim covered it.
All right, we'll just go from here, and just let me know when to stop at this point.
skips.
This jovial nature, almost unhinged a little bit, comes out of nowhere for me. In a good way.
You can probably stop right there.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's you asked the question earlier, like what is the meaning of the snare break starting, and the honest answer was we have to start drumming. It is that effect happens, or that thought process happens often, where, like you mentioned, the bass skips. Those bass skips are there because I didn't think the velocity was enough while they were moving, but I didn't want to change the pacing in which they got to their ending dot. So then the only option is like method of travel edits. And so then that happens. I just say that because sometimes the freedom that this show has given us allows for us to feel okay with that development. Like typically I'd be
Right.
like, put the bass skips in, and then I'd think like, well, why would the bass skip be on beat 3? You know, and I'm trying to like intellectually justify. And then what ends up happening like practically in our show design process is we just slow down a lot and try to draw meaning in ways that don't need to be there. And that's not me saying that the show is meaningless, because that is not the case at all. What it is, though, is like one of the emotions of the reality of things ending. Like we talked about, I think the most maybe predictable way some people think about things ending is like the more somber, depressing, sad version of it, which is part of it. That is a reality of things ending. But we also talked about and for any of us who lived through COVID, like we know this reality, like we've had this thing like ripped away from us immediately without notice. Like one of the things we talked about were like, well, if we went to Rhythm X and we knew it was the last time we'd ever do it, we would have so much fun.
Oh,
like
yeah.
We would have the most fun. And so there was this feeling of like, there's this is going back to that, like the full gamut of that emotional spectrum. Like part of it would be very sad. I think if it were the last, if we were at this indie regional and we knew with 100% certainty that Rhythm X was never going to do another show again, we would never be around each other again. Tears would be shed for sure, but we would also laugh a lot. We would do this full gamut. So there's this freedom in this movement of just like, it's okay. Like there is a moment, you probably won't even notice it, I forget to look at it often, where two cymbal players just peek up behind the couch. And the reason we do it is because it's funny. It's there because it's funny. The couch move to the corner is because, well, the couch needs to move. I don't want it in the center of the floor anymore because I want to open up the staging. Well, we got to move the couch. So what's the usual way we do it? And then let's not do that. So what if Daphne stays on the couch? What if, there's all these thought processes start, and you keep referencing like your kind of rapper metaphor, Mike, which I think is fair. And the rapper that we have here, at least for this movement, is like basically like, what do you have to lose? If you knew that this thing was ending, like, why not just go do whatever you want? I'm not saying that's good advice. I'm just saying that's a reality of how the human experience compartmentalizes things ending. And so we wanted this like departure in the show, and this movement ended up being this, where it was basically just like, why not just do that? Why not just have two cymbal players pop up? Why not just have the bassists kick their legs out real silly? Why not do all these things that we want to do? A lot of the choreography is like, and the music calls for it, but it's like inherently like a little whimsical. And it does kind of come out of nowhere, which is, by design, because this, again, all this relating back to the emotional experience here, these things aren't like predictable or ebbing and flowing at a normal rate. Like
the show is extremely unpredictable
side by side. Yes,
it's so unpredictable.
Right.
But it keeps it engaging.
Yeah, because as soon as you have those gear shifts, you're in that mode of, well, what's going to happen next, and then you're sitting there engaged more, and you're feeling more emotional involvement in what the show is making you feel as an audience member, because you're waiting to see what's next, and so you're focusing. It's cool. Go ahead, Tim.
The why not that Ryan mentions, I think, is an interesting. It could just as easily be the title of the show. It's sort of. I don't think it carries as much weight or intrigue or mystery as the end does. It's not as powerful of a statement, but it certainly is sort of a guiding component as well. One of the things I wanted to mention, just like that we're benefiting quite a bit from this zoomed out view of the show as well, is the visual contribution of the front ensemble. Mm-hmm. So if you notice, they have choreography from beginning to end of this show. There's not a moment that they don't. Sometimes it is a sort of unified reflection of what's going on the floor behind them. Other times it's completely unique just to them and what they're performing and what they're playing. But they are in and of themselves. Like if you could just watch front ensemble perform their show, it's just a movie in and of itself. And sometimes they do things that we have not given them directly. Like we haven't given them the responsibility of, hey, on this count, do this thing. They know that part of their exploration in being a component of this product and of this journey that we're on for the next couple of weeks is contributing as much as they can as a theatrical performer all the way throughout. So if at any point you watch the front ensemble, they're always contributing to the visual of this show. And I think that's just, I think it's a testament to them because they have manning enough music to play at the same time. But like that skip that the bass drums are doing, like the front ensemble's doing it, and it's probably harder for them.
Oh yeah, there's the one where they're going back and forth. Yeah,
right.
Left to right, yeah.
I mean, and that's a component of it, but like it's just constant for them. They have visual responsibilities all the way throughout the show.
Heck yeah! Actually, the first time we ever watched the show, was at the Dayton stream, and I just noticed them. They were all like, all the members were just doing a run, and they're just staring straight at the audience, like nobody's looking down. They're just ripping it. And they're just like smiling and looking around. I was like, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, that's sort of a like, wait, you can do that?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we can do that. Well, then do that. Like that's now part of our show.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, we'll just keep it. I'll back up a few seconds, and then we'll just keep it going. Again, let me know when you want me to stop.
We probably stop right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna need to talk about the next part.
Well, at the beginning of that phrase, you know, the visual ensemble member is interacting. You know, she claps, the light comes on, and then it all just comes like crashing down. And I thought that was a pretty, I don't know, like accurate representation maybe of just like, you know, an epiphany, and then life comes crashing down at times, and then she's like, almost like, to me it looked like she was almost trying to do CPR on it to fix it.
Yes.
She's like, what's wrong with this thing?
Yeah,
but
it looks like that because that's what's happening.
She's literally been Let's take a look.
So
yeah, there was this idea. Yeah, I'll let Ryan speak to this a little bit more, but every component of our set dismantles. So there was this idea that you know, if you somehow could see like 100-year time lapse of whenever you cease to exist, like what happens to all of your stuff in the course of like 30 seconds, how it would disappear, dissolve, degrade, be overcome with, you know, mold, dust, plant life, whatever. It would cease to be the thing that you were so familiar with when you were around it, or when you had it, or when you put so much importance in it. So these material things that we're surrounded with that are very familiar to us, they it's odd that we put so much importance in them, even though they're they're, I don't know, it's not necessarily justified. They aren't nearly as important as the people. And so this is the first exploration in the show of something that has been, so far, it's a decoration. Now it's this decoration that has been destructed to a certain extent. And then there's this layer of concern, this like emotional concern over it. Here's this thing that like I want to put it back together. I want so desperately to do that, but maybe that's not what I should be concerning myself with. That's the immediate response to it is, hey, this thing broke. Let me see if I can fix it. And I think the value of that action is something that we play with intentionally throughout. Yeah, I'll let Ryan speak to sort of the prop usage in this moment just a little bit more.
Yeah. So the metaphor that Tim shared certainly was a driving force in a lot of this justification. Some of it is like so that's one of the ways to compartmentalize the furniture breaking, the way Tim just shared, which is a way that I do think about it. Another way that I think about it is the furniture kind of represents, it's like the picture of the things that you think are more important than they are. And in like the sobering reality of things ending, it's common for someone to find themselves realizing like, I really spent a lot of time focusing on that thing that really was not of value. So there's like the chronology of the furniture, of them like deteriorating and breaking. There's also like the person's relationship to the furniture, because the furniture doesn't just break, someone breaks it. And I view like the way that I kind of mentally compartmentalize that is it's like the almost like therapeutic journey of someone realizing like there's a lot of things that I could really waste my life focusing on. That if I were able to just like soberly boil down what is actually worth my time, these things would not make the list. And so then like once that reality sets in, then it's like, well, I don't want these things anymore. And so our journey of that is like, well, then let's break them. So some of that, there's the kind of those like parallel like through lines that are going on. And then like tertiarily, I think that's a word, to that is still remains the freedom of interpretation of the show. I don't know who put the lamp resuscitation in. It wasn't me. I think it's Alyssa who's doing the solo. Which just shout out like one of the things I've really learned in this role now that this is the third show I've done in this capacity is I really know the people I'm working with and I know the members more than I ever have. And there are times where I know like 50% of this idea, and I know you all will figure out the other 50%, and I'm not going to bog you down. So like if you sat in a rehearsal sometimes and listened to the directive we gave members, I guess I won't throw anyone else under the bus. I often sound like just a terrible teacher because I will give just the vaguest guidelines to our membership of what to do. And I do it because I know when they start interpreting whatever I said, I don't want to box them in. Like their own creativity and imagination being baked into the show will create a uniqueness that would not have come to pass if I overly tailored or nitpicked what a moment was going to be. We also kind of what ended up, this was not by design, and I didn't even realize it in the drill process until like right about now. But I started like a little bit associating a piece of furniture with each movement of the show. I mean, like some of these things are just like elements of design. We have all this furniture. How do they get used? When do they get used? What is the soundtrack when they get used, and who's going to do it? How do we pace it in that way? Like we hit the end of the second movement, and I'm like, everything on the floor can break. So we have this trick up our sleeve. And I'm like, okay, well, when's the best way to do this? Like, well, maybe now would be a good time to do one. So then like movement 3 kind of becomes like this lamp movement. And then we start to explore, you'll see as the show goes on, we start to associate like pretty specifically with a singular piece or category of furniture. But a lot of that again is just like, it's feeling inspired by what we're inspired by or like moved emotionally by what we are. But then also like intellectually getting out of our own way, allowing this to be whatever it wants to be, putting the confines that we want on it. But maybe to use Mike's metaphor again, like the wrapper can't be too tight or what we make is going to feel very predictable and typical and, mundane. So that's a little bit of how that movement came to be.
I love it.
All right.
Heck yeah. Shall we? Unless Tim, you had something else.
Just a couple of things to like little things to notice in that movement of the show that I particularly like. One is so there's a moment where the bass drums go over to the table. They're right now in that screenshot there. They're over at that table sort of during the snare feature, and they're having their own little like dinner party.
Tea party.
There's this there's this there's this SNL skit with Will Ferrell. It's an old one where he's sitting at the dinner table with his family. It's the one where he yells out like, "I drive a Dodge Stratus."
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And he goes back and forth from this like totally calm, collected father figure. You know, honey, please pass the salt. You know, he's so like polite and just put together to just exploding with rage about like the smallest thing, and he goes back and forth. So it's just like switch on and off, and it's a hilarious skit. And I remember having that thought about when the bass drums get to go over to that table, and that's sort of one of those loose descriptions of like, hey, if you haven't seen this skit, maybe watch it. You know, like pull it up on YouTube, check it out or whatever. But also just explore what it is that you want to do at that table. So if you watch them, they have a whole thing that they do over there during the snare feature in the chairs. It's an interesting sort of development from just designing the show the way that we did. We chose to have 10 chairs, but we only have 8 snare drummers. And there was a moment where Ryan and I were talking about designing this part of the show, and he's like, "Well, you know, we have 8 snare drummers, so we have to utilize the 10 chairs and like in a way that makes it feel like we're moving around enough." But then we had these 2 VE members, Anna and Celeste, who were sort of like just on an island by themselves, and we needed to be able to move and place the chairs there with them. So we needed 10 people to move the 10 chairs to that area. And Ryan's like, "I'm not sure how I get like Celeste and Anna out of there when we do the snare feature." And then just mentioned, well, maybe we don't. Maybe we just leave them in there and have them be a component of the snare feature. So if you look closely, which you really maybe aren't able to see in this, but if you're watching the show live, you for sure can. During the snare feature on the chairs, there are 2 of our VE members who are in there, and they're doing everything that the snares are. Like they do all the choreo, yes, but they're also holding their hands. Like we had a moment where we brought them up to the table when we're like teaching this part of the show, and we're like, "Hey, here's a pair of sticks. Hold them like you would a snare drummer." And they're, you know, like we kind of adjust like their grip and everything, and we say like, "This is what you do." And so then because they did some reps earlier before this interaction where they were kind of like mocking the snares, like, "Oh, I'm going to play my rim shots like this, and I'm going to look so cool playing my left hands like that." You know, typical sort of like battery member performance inflections that just kind of happen naturally. And then I just kind of fell in love with the fact that they're doing that, and I was like, why don't we make that part of, like, let's encourage that, like let's dive into it and make it more of a thing. So they actually like I wouldn't say learn the parts. It's not like you could just hand them a drum and they could do it, but pretty close. Like they know where the big accents are and the rim shots, and like every time we move our head to the side, like inflections, they do the same thing.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
So it's just, you know, one of those tiny little things that is, like Ryan mentioned, one of these 50-50, like we want to encourage this, and let's just see where it goes. If instead of stopping that development and doing everything that we think we should do, let's just let it go. Like let's let it thrive and see what it turns into. And that's just, it's plastered all over the show. But we could probably watch that component again.
I was going to say there's one more layer, and I'm hesitant to bring it up because I don't often want people looking at transitions that we're doing. But there are moments of this show that came to life by nature of us. You know, when you're designing an indoor drumline show, like there's things you have to do. Like you have to have a snare break, you have to have a full battery feature, you need to do choreo. There's all these things you have to do, right? And one of the things you have to do is, in whatever way you'd like to interpret it, you kind of need to clear the stage. You know, that's a loose terminology, but just like make sure that whatever you're putting the spotlight on has enough visual negative space that it feels like that moment varies from what's around it. And so that usually often is like, take them behind the front ensemble, take them behind a prop, take them to an end zone, take them to the back sideline. So we hit this moment of the show, and up to this point, it's dense musically and visually. There's like a lot of drill, there's a lot of sets, there's a lot of velocity, there's a lot of full battery phrases. We're now starting to get into some like longer lived section features, which just typically in an indoor drumline show is where you got to start to do this principle. And so I was like, okay, I need the tenors and the cymbals to like, go away for a little bit. But we had also committed to no one can go behind the props was a rule we had at the beginning. Like I don't want to use that device. So no one ever goes behind those props. Maybe with one exception of the very end of the show when they need to do the effect. But the tenors go to the side 2 end zone and the cymbals go to the back of the floor. And I was like, man, I don't have anywhere else to take them. And I would hate to just, for someone, myself included, to spend this wonderful snare break watching these people not move with like on their knee. So I was like, well, how do we solve that? It was like, well, what if they just one by one stand up, sprint out on the floor, run into each other, fall on the ground, and then run back to their drums, which is exactly what happened. So they just one by one. I don't even know if people notice these things, but
I hadn't seen that.
Oh, you'll see it this time around the snare break. There's a bunch of people sprinting and running into each other. And there's 2 ways I can approach like explaining it. Like I can attach a bunch of like conceptual meaning to it. It is there, but I also like right now, like I'm so happy with the freedom the show has given that we can do things like this. And I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but I feel this way. And that's honestly enough for me right now. We can do things like this. And when I see it, I'm like, this works. Like, I don't know why this works, because if it were any other show we'd ever done and I made this decision or whoever made this decision, this would be ridiculous. Like this would get laughed out of the gym, but we do it. And it's like, you know what, that works. So there, like to Tim's point, there are these little like problems that happen in drumline shows, and I guess probably anything that you make. And usually we're trying how to solve the problem. And instead, a lot this year, what we've done is just like, how do we make the problem an effect? Like the problem was we have 8 snare drummers and 10 chairs. Like, well, we're not punting on it. They're in there now, and we're going to figure that out. Or we have to get the cymbals and tenors out of here. We're not just going to have them sit there. What if they just sprint around and run into each other?
There you go.
Oh my
Creativity at its finest, folks.
Will Ferrell reference. Gate had never been about that.
All right, I think I went back far enough. Again, just tell me when to stop. I just want to say, now that you've pointed that out, I hadn't noticed that before. They're running into each other. It's really cool how the chaos of that and the randomness, well, quote unquote randomness, frames the controlled uniformity of the snare break moment. And it just acts as it's like a moving frame almost around it. And you don't even notice it, but it's just cool. It works. It keeps you engaged. You don't even realize it as a viewer.
You want to judge visual this year, Mike?
Well, we did go on a rant about visual effect judging.
Yeah, we did just do that, but that's all right. Moving on.
Pretty good set.
Yeah.
Now we get to the screaming section.
Mm-hmm. Is that a blank book, or is there something in that book?
You can probably pause it. We can
All
we can talk about this.
Yep.
I had an interpretation of that section.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, go for it.
So to me, it mirrored someone who was like, the guy goes over to the bookcase, and maybe someone who's looking through memories or photo albums and something, and just going through this stage of grief. But then almost like, the laughter comes in, because sometimes you just like, you start laughing as a response to your pain or your response to your grief, or you just, grief turns into laughter.
You reach the
like
point of all you can do is
like
laugh.
That. So that was my interpretation.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
All right, there it is.
I think, just like, we've talked about a lot through this conversation, it's not necessarily correct or incorrect. It's yours. That's the important part. It's like, you watch the part of the show, and you said it up perfectly. Like, this is what I think that part means. I have a theory about this. If we can create something that elicits that sort of reaction in people, awesome. For people to have the ability to, because I'm sure you didn't watch it and then immediately think, oh, I think it's somebody looking through a photo book and they're going through these memories, and then like, you didn't form that opinion or that description in an instant after watching it.
No.
You probably watched it, and maybe even a couple of times, and then after thinking about it in a more latent sense, or at a different time than just being faced with the moment on your computer or your phone or whatever, you're thinking about it more and more outside of the 7.5 minutes that we perform. I think that's great. Sometimes, so the books, they all have words in them, so they're real books. What they are is for kind of, I guess, for us to know, or for anybody else to find out. It's not like they're, there's nothing untoward about them. It's just
Right.
they're just, they're our books. They're all mint, all, just like everything else. All the pages, the covers, our wonderful admin team has made sure that everything that's out there is mint.
Yeah.
So the book. So there was this moment in the 2018 production that's like one of my favorite little tiny detail, like Easter egg kind of things that I've ever seen, where we were performing. I think it was Englishman in New York by Sting. In that part of the show that we had our visual ensemble, and they were sort of sitting on the drum set stage, and there was one guy who just he brought a book. He loved to read, and he brought a book to rehearsal so that when he wasn't involved in the reps of rehearsal, he would just read. And as far as I know, this is how this happened. And we just decided that should be in the show. But one of the things that he did during that moment of the show, he's sitting on the drum set stage, and he's just flipping through pages of the book, and he's reading it, and then he flips another page, and then he's reading it. The great thing about that is the book is upside down. So it's this like just like comical twist that like you don't need to know that it's there, but the fact that it's there is such a wonderful component of this activity, that there are all these nuanced effects that things that people decide to do during their performance, that it makes it their own. And I think the more that we allow our membership to make parts of the show their own, the more that people like you are able to create a wide variety of reactions or interpretations that are their own, right? So like if we were just the ones just commanding every movement, every decision, every note, everything, then it sort of narrows the capability for our audience, whoever that audience is, to have an emotional reaction or an interpretation of what it is that we're doing. The more we allow our human beings who are out there dressed in mint to do what it is that they want to do during these moments, to an extent, the more variety of interpretations and experiences that we create for every audience member that's out there. So I think your interpretation is great. Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think to that point, my hope for everyone that watches this medium, even past for the X, is that they could think what they think and be okay with it. Like a lot of times, I think I mean, I do this with movies sometimes. Like if I watch a movie I really like, especially if it's like a big intellectual pursuit kind of movie, like I want to go watch like director interviews and I want to like figure out like the Easter eggs that exist or whatever. And there's a place for that, and I do think it's cool. But there's also something to be said in this activity where I think a lot of like audience members, whether those are like just all of us in whatever way we do it, judges, fans, whoever, they like rob themselves of part of the experience because they won't let themselves like be okay with what they thought or felt during the show unless they know for sure that's what the person who made it was thinking or feeling. When in reality it just doesn't matter. Like it's a, you know, the
Right.
consumption of this activity is not like a pursuit to think the thought that the person thought while they were making it. Like it's art or it's performance or however you want to compartmentalize it. It's competition. It's all those things. Like it's okay for people to have varied experiences. And not only is it okay, like that's actually the only true or real way to even do this. Like anything else becomes like borderline brainwash or manipulation. Like, hey, don't think or feel that when you watch this. Instead, think and feel this. That's like a strange category, but it's very present in the activity. So I'll have to say, Evan, I think the way that resonates with me, what you just said. I don't think about it that exact way, but it wasn't made to be thought about in any one exact way anyways. So it's not like there's an objectively right interpretation. There's probably a couple that might be objectively wrong. I can imagine you saying something and being like, "That's not it," but no, that certainly wasn't one. Yeah, I think that's a great interpretation.
All right.
This is one of the show parts of the show too that the screaming, like the screaming in the ballad, I think is I think it's probably like the widest variety of interpretations of this particular part of the show, like what it is that we're doing and why we decided to do it. And I'm not sure how much I want to try to explain what it is, but some of the reactions that we've gotten, I mean, most of them from our judging community thus far, in fact, all of them from the judging community have been reactions of either positivity, compliment, or intrigue, I would say, where we've had, I think there was a visual judge at one point who watched it and just said, "Oh yeah, juxtaposition," and that was it. That was like the only comment. We had a music judge who reacted to it when the first scream happens. David, our snare drummer, he's the first person to put his drum down, and he's very he's very loud and committed to the moment. And we had a music judge who heard that and he went, "Uh-oh." Like he thought somebody like broke their ankle or something like that. And
oh man.
Yeah. And then he's like, oh. And then he just kind of got, quieter and quieter and just took in the moment. We had a music effect judge who watched it, who said, "I have no idea what is going on, but I love it." And so again, it's one of these things where I want to explain away any potential interest that somebody has in it, or like introspection of what it could be or what it could mean. I think it is nuanced and it's different. Also, ballads are historically painful to try and do something that seems meaningful during them. It's like this prototypical. We have a ballad, so we're gonna manipulate a prop, and it's gonna be a pretty looking choreography that we have, or we're gonna set our drums down and we're gonna do this. Like, there's this expectation during ballads in indoor drumline that whenever we attack it as a design team, it can be painful. Like it's always okay, well, what happens during the ballad that really makes it I don't know, that makes it something that is going to be intriguing or worthwhile. So in this one, we decided that if it were just unexpected, like whatever happened was unexpected and unpredictable, then that was the best avenue that we could go. The members have certainly taken this challenge on during the ballad. We've had to calm them down a little bit sometimes. Other times we encourage, like we hear certain sounds. Like there are these like the female voices that we have that are coming through that have this sort of like cackle to them. I thought was really intriguing. So I recall a moment in a recent rehearsal where I said, like, "Hey, if you're contributing to that sort of sound, like bring that in the texture out just a little bit more." But we are sliding, like the components of the mixer a little bit, like our scream mixer, where we're like, "Hey, first one loud, and then everything a little softer and more like a grunt, and then more breathy, and then like so. We are sort of sculpting what's being contributed by them, but they're certainly adding to it themselves. Celeste, our performer, who's sort of a soloist coming up in the next movement, she's the one who the book is thrown at, and she's like our soloist moving on when we have our bass feature. She just started laughing at one point at the end of this. We told the rest of the ensemble back there in the corner to do it, but then she just took it upon herself to just like completely break character and start just cracking up at the people behind them. And she almost never does the same thing twice, like in any rep or performance or show. And it's fascinating. Like just, again, the freedom that this particular program has allowed our membership to have. That's just one small example of. But it's one of those things that I'm really happy with the decisions that we've made, or rather the decisions to not restrict what we have historically restricted, that have created these sort of unique, unpredictable moments in the show.
Yeah, that freedom is very liberating and genuine and authentic. So
yeah. All right.
This is one of Mike's favorite parts here.
Dude, this bass moment I think is one of the best moments of WGI this year. It's more a little subdued, it's just cool. It just feels good.
Ensemble choreography.
That right there is freaking sick. I don't know, it just hits. Front ensemble layering at the end.
Throwing the pages there.
We'll probably stop there for a second.
Yep.
Ryan, you want to talk about that moment?
Yeah. Well, okay, so it kind of comes to life through multiple things here. Well, first of all, I back to Tim's ballad commentary. Especially as a drill writer, you kind of have to think about the show in totality. You can't, if you ever just set up one thing. I mean, there's maybe exceptions to this, but for the most part, if you ever just set something up without knowing what the downstream impacts of that set are, it's really easy to get yourself in a bind. So the ballad progression exists because this needed to be the set for this movement. And then we just started thinking about I remember hadn't written it, and I do most things, the initial draft of things, most of it I do not do live. And that's mainly just because I like to sit with it for a while and take drafts. But this show more than the other ones, kind of by nature, just trying to push myself just to see what would happen, because I kind of know what'll happen if I sit behind a computer. Like I know the style that I'll make. And we were working on the ballad, and so they're sitting in that wedge, and every thought imaginable of ballads crosses my mind. Like I can see, anyone who's tried to do visual design in this activity knows how hard ballads are. It's really not easy to make them come to life the right way. So I was like, well, I know what the ending picture is. I don't know what any other picture is. What if we take the whole ballad just to get to that spot? And then we started experimenting with what if we slam the drums on the ground? What if it became more character oriented? We kind of punted on what the traditional choreographic responsibilities of those more ballad-like movements are, and got there. So this set here exists because we needed to start breaking the chairs. So all the chairs break in this set. The musical association of this is pulled from this arrangement of this piece of music is from Jordan Peele's Us, and it comes with those really big cinematic impacts, and that just felt like the perfect soundtrack to break the chairs. So we knew that was going to be the case. So then it's well, what's the picture? We know we have the bait. Like Tim had already said, that he wanted this to be this kind of like very extended virtuosic bass moment that would basically span the whole movement. And we had kind of gotten to Celeste as a soloist. Another goal of mine for the VE, which was mostly accomplished, is to give all of them different chances to be kind of in the spotlight. So you'll see we do not stick with one soloist at any point in time. There's a constant rotation of who gets that spotlight. Most of that's a byproduct because we have a bunch of all-stars who can handle it. But we get to this set, and all of that furniture breaking happens like in tandem with like Celeste's book exploration, which, to Tim's point, like we give guidelines, and she's in a minority of people who could do this. We give her like very short guidelines on what to do, and then just exploration happens. And it really isn't. I remember the last time I was in thinking like, I've seen so many reps now, and there's so many different things you've done that I like that we can start to like populate. Like maybe we could start to do some of the same thing with this. But a lot of this is just that we liked the book, we liked the ripping. We had to get Celeste a book. We tried tossing the book and catching it, which is about the most like trope rhythm X decision of all time. We tried it 3 times. It wasn't working, and if it was caught, it just wasn't like doing anything. And then and this has kind of been like the foundation of how things come to life in the show. It's like, well, then let's just not do that. Just drop a book. Just throw it in the air and let it land on the ground, and Celeste will go get it wherever it is. So this part, one of the things about this moment in the show and the movement before it, I have no idea if this is other people's experience watching it, but the emotions I feel when watching it do not line up with the soundtrack that's happening. Like it is like emotionally, I'm reaching a point, and I know I am closer to this project than most people are that are outside of the organization, but like it's emotionally hard for me to get through this, like without breaking down, and which is like comical when it's put next to the backdrop of people screaming and laughing and slamming their instruments on the ground. Like so I have intentionally like parted ways with trying to understand whatever we've done here, because it like moves me so seriously emotionally. I know if I try to think about it too much, I'm going to rob myself of this experience. And I could be alone on an island in this thought process, but this is what it is for me. Like I knew what I wanted to feel when I watched it, and I feel it. And so I have like just blinders on my brain. Like if I try to think about intellectually justifying this to myself, I'm going to make this part of the show or the show itself into like a college essay, and it's not going to move me the way I want it to. So I'm okay with like sitting with it the way that it is. But to Tim's point, like he mentioned a couple judge responses. Audience members other than us probably don't do this, but like we often will watch the audience during shows to try to get a read for how people respond to things. If anyone is brave enough to just turn around and look at people during the laughter, you will not see 2 individuals with the same experience. You will see people who are like mortified at what's going on. You will see people who are like dying of laughter because of how funny they think it is. You'll see people that are like embarrassed for the sake of the ensemble. You'll see like any and everything possible, which is just like the most perfect amalgamation of what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be like the most confusing thing to possibly take in emotionally. And so that's where this movement is for me. And aside from that, the basses, they just play really well. And it's awesome to see them do what they're doing.
True.
Well, talking about that in the audience, experience and reaction, I've watched this video a few times, but there are a few people in the audience that during this bass moment and like the end section after like the hope lyric, like they're having just such a authentic visceral reaction. They're just like, they can't sit still. They're just like leaning in. They're just like looking around like, is everybody else watching this? Like, it's pretty cool. One of them's, I know this guy in the blue shirt back here. This kid, he's digging it.
All right, I backed up. We'll watch it. We'll keep it rolling.
Stop there for just a quick second. Yeah, Evan, I'm so glad you pointed out the dude in the blue shirt.
Well,
I was just watching him the whole time. He I mean, you can find this and watch it. I'm sure.
sorry, everybody.
But,
I zoomed
man,
in. None of the viewers can see that guy in the blue shirt, but
that's all right. He's just so
he's there.
So the one note. I remember what's cool about this as a designer too is like I remember the specific moments where these details and elements went into the show. Some of it is like it's sort of too macro to really pinpoint like a memory. Like we're going to learn the dots in the drill and the like we do this sort of thing. But like when I was sitting behind my computer and putting these notes on the page for the bass drums, I got to that part. So Mike, you mentioned like the one note that they play. They just get in a file and they play one unison on a big old count 3. And I remember specifically like so often my scores for battery just look like I dumped a bunch of black pepper on the page, and I tend to I tend to overwrite a little bit, and then we sort of whittle things down or whatever. It was one of those intentional moments where I was like, you know what, just one note. Like in this one measure, we're only going to play one note, and it's going to be right there. And it started as just a bass unison, and then so when we put it in and we put it into practice, it didn't quite have the gravity that I was hoping it would. So the first thing that we did is we added concert bass drum along with it to just give it some support. And that was better, but it still wasn't great. And so then I remember this must have been maybe like Dayton Regional Weekend or something. I remember a specific rehearsal where I told everybody in the ensemble, I said, hey, on that one note, and by that time, everybody in the group knows what I'm talking about. Like on the one note, I want you all to say the word boom. I want you to yell the word boom. So that's like that added to it even more. And then what I didn't realize at the time was that the front ensemble is actually down behind their keyboards during that note, or at least up to that point, that was their responsibility. So when I told them to yell the word boom, they took it upon themselves to like, okay, well, I'm going to jump up from behind my keyboard like a fish just going out of water, like over a dock, yeah, like, and while I do that, I'm going to yell that word boom, and then I'm going to go back to just disappearing behind the board. And so it's just like, and it's one of those things that I remember specifically how these things went into the show, and through the course of this season, it has become easier and easier for the first time we try something for it to be like the buy-in of the membership is just it's through the roof. Like there's times where early in the process you start requesting things that seem a little atypical, and there's a level of discomfort with it. Like, are you sure? Like this feels funny to do. I'm not sure I want to do that. Especially with spoken word or singing, or like there's nothing more vulnerable than that. Like every single one of these members is more comfortable playing their instrument or dancing than they would be like singing or saying something out loud or public speaking or whatever. And so, but throughout the course of the season, it has become easier and easier for us to just say like, hey, put this detail in. And it's almost like I have this gut instinct about things in Rhythm X shows where before I put it in the show, I see it in my head and I play it in my head, and I put myself in UD Arena watching us do it for the last time, like on the last Saturday night in front of the thousands of people who are there and who are all there for a reason. And I put myself in that moment, and if it's successful when I imagine that like in my own headspace, then I know like that's got to go in. We're not going to go one more rep of rehearsal without that detail being in the show, because I know it's going to be it's going to be successful. There are historical things like that, like when in the 2022 show, right before we went into our closer, the Nirvana show, Heart Shaped Box, where Dawson, our snare drummer, has a solo. He didn't always play the like low singles that just went on forever. I think the earliest version of that solo for him would just ended with like some buzzes and then he stopped playing. And there was one rehearsal that I specifically remember. Just I played it in my head. I was like, yeah, we got to do this. I knew how talented he was. I asked him. I said, hey, I want you to play the lowest, fastest singles that you could possibly play. And he says, well, for how long? I was like, as long as you can. As long as makes sense. And then he did it, and in that one rep, like the first time that he tried it, my commentary to the entire ensemble, or in front of the entire ensemble after that, was directly at Dawson. But I said, hey, when you do that on the last night of the season, people are going to lose their minds. you've done this enough times that you know like how combining excellence with the moment creates effect. And like there are just so many of those moments in this show where we collectively as a design team have had ideas of like this is going to be great, and when someone brings that up and we're like, hey, if you think it's going to be great, I trust you, put it in. And then we don't go another rep without that being a part of our show, so that it's as comfortable and as rehearsed as it possibly could be the next time that we get to perform it. And that's this part of the show. It's, I mean, all of them are, but this is just littered with things like that, little tiny little details that were like, we know this is going to work, and then they do.
Cool.
I can't wait to feel it.
I know. All right, back up a few seconds, and then we'll keep going.
That's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight. And I don't know if I can do it.
It is so recognizable.
Yep, immediately.
Good place to stop.
So was that Losing My Religion song, was that the first full lyric of the show? I don't remember to this point.
There's a couple
think
little ones
so.
in movement 5.
Oh yeah,
Or
I got
basement.
5 on it. It said.
Oh yeah. I got 5. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, there are words that we've said. I guess like the word "boom" is a real word
Yeah,
that we said. You know, but it's a little bit more of a musical effect than it is a communicated lyric or something that has intent and meaning behind it. But yeah, this is the first time that we sort of explored like expressing some sort of vulnerability. I think that this moment is it's a little bit more of a ballad than the other one. Like it's short lived, you know. It's quick. Um, but this was one of those like uh, Andrew really held on to REM as an artist that he's always wanted to do in a Rhythm X show. That was one of his like with this song is staying on the Spotify playlist. Like that one's not going away. We're going to use this. And then he and I had a discussion of what lyrics we thought were the most poignant or meaningful or appropriate of that. Um, and so this is a little bit more of like an opportunity where you look in the mirror and realize just the myriad of reactions that you've had, and that like you're getting closer and closer to whatever that ending is, and you're sort of faced with that reality, and it's a little bit more of a serious part of the show, like if you really just had to sit with it, and you're not angry, you're not like playful, you're just very real and honest. It's probably the first time in the show where we live in that emotional quality for an extended period of time. The choreo that Corinne did for that is incredible. That's another one of those things that like you just don't get it on video. You know, you can't see like, so all of our members are singing those lyrics at the same time as they're doing the choreo. Um, and it doesn't really matter if you can hear them doing it or not, but like you see them say it. And so the choreo enables them to kind of just convey those lyrics. And no, it's different than just doing choreography in silence, like in with your mouth closed, because it means more. Like every movement that you do that is in alignment with a syllable makes that syllable more than just a syllable. Like it makes it a meaningful connective message. And so that can be outward to our audience. I think probably more importantly, it's meaningful to the membership when they do it. They are literally in a spotlight. They're not sure if what they hope to achieve is something that they can actually achieve, and there's real passion that is brought out from their performance by recognizing that doubt can be a useful thing. It's not always a scary thing. So if I'm not sure that I can do this, there's value in sort of internalizing doubt that exists within what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I can add a couple things to that. I think this part of the show in particular, at least to me, is like a testimony to the other three members of the design team that aren't here. I remember when the REM got pitched, I just didn't make sense to me at all. I remember listening to the music and thinking like, I don't see any of this. But Andrew's going to do it. So I'm like, great, let's play REM. I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's kind of going back to what I was saying earlier. Like he's the one that has to bring it to life. And if he's got, if he's willing to step up and say, no, this is what it needs to be, then it really doesn't take me long to just be like, that's exactly what we should do. Like, I know he'll kill that. And then also with, Tim mentioned, Corinne with the choreography that's in the corner, as well as the moment that's about to come up. But one of the things I really wanted to try to do with this show, but also just a natural byproduct of working with everyone more, is when we write music or when they write music and I hear it, I can tell like visually who should be holding the baton, so to speak, like who should be running what that moment's going to be. And like when we got the REM, it was like, okay, I know Corinne could run with this for 25 seconds or 20 seconds, get us something we need. Same thing right here. And so I just want to make sure those people get their credit. And then the last one, kind of relative to what Tim was talking about lyrically, one of the byproducts for me of talking about things ending so much and really trying to live in that reality of like, what if this was the last Rhythm X show we ever got to be a part of? It was like paralyzing for months. Like I went through like in my design career thus far, by far the biggest bout of insecurity and doubt I've ever had with what we were doing. I mean, Tim and Josh probably more than anyone, but the whole team was getting calls from me on like a weekly basis of like, this isn't going to work. This is a bad idea. I loved it, but I was like, it's not happening. Like, it's not happening. It's not going to work. And I remember specifically like Tim had mentioned, like remembering when things got put in. I remember when the REM got written, and I remember it was like midnight. I usually just need to talk to someone. That's kind of how I just like process somebody on the team. And it was like midnight. I was like, oh, Josh probably awake. I was like, hey, can I just call you? And I just like, dude, I don't see it. I don't know what it's supposed to be. And I can't, like, I don't know if it's just my personality, but it's really hard for me to start until I can see the vision of the movement of where it's supposed to go visually. And I just couldn't see it. And he was really helpful in that process of getting it there. But I share all that because like those lyrics, like I don't know if I can do it. Like I'm for the most part out of it right now. But if you are like, if you take this from being like a indoor drumline show concept to like an honest intellectual pursuit, there are moments of just debilitation where it's like the weight of like of what needs to be done. This is the last time it would ever happen. If that was the last drill set I ever got to write, is such a like intense way of thinking about everything you're doing that it's like it puts so much pressure on every nuanced detail that it can cut it down. And I think that's a very real part of, at least this chapter of the emotional experience of things ending is like. So I love this moment, not only because of what it is on the floor, but also it's one of the moments of the show, at least from this season, that I actually relate to the most.
All right.
I love that.
Let's keep rolling.
Uncertainty. I don't know if I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Bernard's almost still doing all the choreo.
I love this part. The build up. So there's a lot in there.
Mhm.
Obviously the build up to the hope lyric. Are they screaming the same thing that's lyrically in the song, like my album, my album,
They're saying my ending.
my ending? Okay. Um, so yeah, like my ending. This is, to bring it back full circle, their ending, their show. It's their opportunity. And then, there's a couple other lyrics in there, like what's the definition of success? Like, how you just said, like, why not? Like, why wouldn't we do this? Like, are we measuring success up to this standard, or our standards, or just what we want to see or what we want to hear and what we want to produce? I don't know. Those lyrics really drive home at the end, because you are creating something no one else can, because no one else is you. No one else is this ensemble. No one else is this design team. No one else is Tim, Ryan, Josh, Andrew, Corinne. Like, no one else is this membership. So literally no one else can. So I don't know. It's pretty impactful.
I think I'm really glad that you articulated that the way that you did, because we have concerns sometimes that, like the decisions that we make for the design of the show are going to come across in a way that we don't intend. In sort of a, like, you never really want to seem cocky or egotistical. Um, and I think it's very easy to interpret that statement in the show, that lyric in the show, as being exactly that. Like, we're doing something that nobody else can. It's not that no one else is capable of marching the same drill or playing the same music or doing the same choreo. It has nothing to do with that. It's just like you said, like, we're doing something that no one else can, because it's us that's doing it. It's this team, it's this group, it's this membership, it's this unique, specific collection of people that makes it something that no one else is capable of doing. And so I'm glad that is your, like, we say, like, you can interpret it in lots of different ways. Like, this one, I'm happy that you're interpreting it in that very specific way. Just because that's exactly how we mean it. We kind of went through. There was a moment where I was Ryan and I were on a call. This is maybe, like, I don't know, September or so, and I was talking to him about this song, and I don't know how it came across my desk, so to speak, but the first time I heard it, I was just really taken by it and by the lyrics of it, and it was one of those that, like, you hear it and then you Google the actual lyrics to the song just to see what they are, and then I put it on the playlist, and so people started hearing it and everything, and I was like, guys, I think this is one that I want to I want to keep in there. I had no idea, like, who NF was up to that point. As far as I know, I had never heard any of his other material. That didn't matter. I heard it and I felt like the emotion of it and, like, the pacing of the song is, I don't know. It's so easy to just, like, discount an artist or, like, the usage of material because you don't happen to like that genre or don't happen to like that person, or I don't know. If you're not a fan of them, you're not a fan. That the point wasn't to use. It's like, Led Zeppelin didn't write tunes that everybody liked. They left that to the Bee Gees, right? So it's just, it wasn't the point. It wasn't to just use material that, like, everyone's gonna love this. It's that this is really meaningful and it's poignant and it expresses almost exactly what it is that we want. The pacing element of it too, like, if you listen to the original tune, it just ends. Like, he's screaming his head off at the end of this song, and it's so aggressive and violent and meaningful, and then it just stops. And that, like, how you end a show is always a question mark in indoor drumline, right? Like, what are you going to do at the very end? How do you make it bigger and better? What's the right thing? Is it big ending? Is it down ending? Is it loud? Is it soft? Is it, what do we do? What do we play? Why? This particular decision, I think, it's one of the most clear and obvious, that when things come to an end, you rarely know exactly when that's going to happen. And so this is just, it's done. And we reach that last note and it just cuts, like, like you just unplugged. And I remember talking with Ryan on that phone call through the lyrics of this song. I read him all of the lyrics, and I could not get through them without getting emotional, or just kind of like tearing up myself because of what it meant to me. As a The 30 years thing too is really kind of funny because we're like, why does that make sense for us to have a song where we say 30 years of something, like, and we wondered, we were so concerned as a design team. We're like, what's our answer to that question? Like, you go into critique and a judge says, okay, so yeah, I love, like the show, you're doing this, you're doing that, you have these lyrics that say 30 years of this, like, why, how, like, what is 30 years? Like, none of these people are 30 years old. They haven't even been around. Like, is it the organization that's been around for 30? Is it, is it the designers? Is it like, we were worried so much that people would ask that question, and zero people have asked that question.
I was
No
about
one
to
has,
ask that question.
yeah, no one. Well, so that
I
doesn't mean
blame
it's,
I blame Chris Gary. I will throw him under the bus. He was the one that told us to ask you what the 30 years
yeah,
was.
well,
So
well, to be perfectly honest, my interpretation of the original song, NF is sort of, he's recognizing that the person that he has been for 30 years of
yeah,
his life is not the person that he wants to be, and he's talking to himself about how there is hope. The song is called Hope. How there's hope to be a different person, a better version of himself
the point is
tomorrow
not the
than he
30
was
years.
today.
It's a length of time, really, and it just
Yeah,
happens to be 30 in the context of that song. Yeah.
yeah. We actually we got we decided at one point, we're like, oh, we're going to change these lyrics around just a little bit so that they make more sense to what we do, like to this activity, this medium, to these people, their age, their journey as members. And we hired a guy to re-record all this stuff so that we could do it. And what it turned into is just a less emotionally honest version of the real song. So we just kind of went back and we're like, you know what? I'm not sure it matters what we say. I'm not sure it matters what the lyrics are, because it's the honesty and the passion behind them that is undeniable in the source material, that we wanted that to come through as much as possible. What we do have is a layer in the synthetic representation of the lyrics that is our membership. So we've recorded them saying all of these phrases. They say them live during the show, but we've also recorded them saying every word of the song, and we've layered that on top of NF when he's saying these things as well. So like that cacophony of voices and like the chaos, especially toward the very end of the show, and like the last maybe like 15 to 20 seconds of the show, that is like everybody's moving, everybody's playing, everybody is vocalizing all the lyrics. We hear NF through the speakers, but we also hear our membership and their actual voices through the speakers on top of that as well, while everything is collapsing and crashing down. So like those layers in there of like, we need to use our voice to make a message and say the things because we're running out of time literally to say them, is something that we are requesting our membership to do honestly. And it's just one of those things, like watching through this show in this, whatever 4-hour conversation that we've had thus far, like watching through this makes me, I'm so excited for Friday night when I get to be with the group again and like see this show again and in person. And it's just, I consider myself so lucky and fortunate to be able to see this product in person as often as I have. And just watching it and like, or talking through it and critiquing it, or describing it, the only thing that it makes me really want to do is just be with this group of people again, to have more opportunities to experience it in person, until we can't anymore.
Yeah. Well,
Shoot.
honestly, I had an idea in the middle of this, as you said, Tim, 4-hour discussion about this. I think we should watch the show start to finish real quick and then just end it at that. After this whole long discussion, just put it in the video with all 4 of us in the corners. Just watch it after all we talk through it. I'll get opportunity real quick. Anybody else have anything they want to hit? Ryan, Evan? I think that's... All right. I'm going to switch us back to the screen. We're going to just watch the show, and then we'll just end the podcast. Comment, like, subscribe, share it. All the links in the description. Let's enjoy it.
Can the audience, or can our viewers see the audience at all?
I can make that happen if we want. They can see part of the audience, but not like the guy in the blue shirt you guys are talking about.
All right. I just like his reaction at the end, but it's all right.
All right. You know
So
what?
genuine.
Here we go.
Performing their 2026 program, The End. WGI Sport of the Arts is proud to present Rhythm Acts.
I love how that visual form resolves for the record. everybody. We'll see everybody in the next video.
Peace.